Let's go.
Welcome to the Trusted Leader Show. I'm your host, David Horsager. Join me as I sit down with influential leaders from around the world to discuss why leaders and organizations fail, top tactics for high performance, and how you can become an even more trusted leader. Welcome to the Trusted Leader Show. It is great to have you here. You're going to love our guest. We went inside on this. He's been a corporate leader, but he's also run our consulting practice for the last year in the midst of COVID and all kinds of other challenges. He's also interim director, operations director for an organization. He is just, he's a friend and he is a brilliant leader. I'm glad to have you here, Mr. Milton Dodd.
Hey, David, thanks. So glad to be on your Trusted Leader Show today.
Well, I can tell you, here's someone I can say he's made me better and personally better. So we're grateful to have you on. But, for people that don't know you, Milton, let's jump in. What are a few things to know about Milton Dodd?
Well, it's really hard to kind of brag on yourself. But, one of the things that I will say about me is I have a passion for leadership, and that started at an early age. I grew up in a very small town, very humble beginnings, in a small town most won't know called Belzona, Mississippi, but is known for being the catfish capital of the world. And I think those good beginnings are where I learned my leadership from my mother, who was a school principal in this town of only one school, and then being able to branch out and really move to Minnesota and to broaden my perspectives by meeting other coaches and being around other people. So in my professional life for the last 24 years, I was part of a great organization. I took an opportunity to pivot at the beginning of this year, and it's been fun ever since.
Well, let's go back to corporate, because you were part of big corporate and you were really, asked in those days to do, in some cases, pretty significant turnarounds and dealing with tough issues. And as a leader, you had to hire, but you had to fire. You had to do things the right way. And I remember one story that you have where you really were trusted even in the way and when you had to lay people off. But what was it like to kind of be a part of that turnaround? How did you stay trusted in the midst of having to turn something around? Sometimes tough.
It's always tough when you take a look at in any organization. There's always going to be ebbs and flows. There's going to be change. The winds of change it affects every organization. Is the winds of change is undefeated. And in my role, I was really called on to handle some very tough topics, I think, or challenges. I think because of the way that I managed it. I always worked, or when I approached leadership challenges, whether they were something that, whether we were expanding territories or contracted territories, I always approached them with the people in mind. And I tried to get into the mindset of those people who were being affected adversely and really showed a high level of respect for them as we walk through the challenges that we all face. I remember one particular story when I was had a very challenging opportunity. And at the end of the conversation, the man thanked me. And he thanked me not because of the situation, but because of the way I approached him. And I think in leadership, you're never going to fall away or be able to avoid challenges. And it is in the way that you put yourself in the mindset of the people and really show respect to them throughout allows you to become a better leader for them and for the situation at hand.
I love that. And we're going to get back to personal leadership too. But I think we're thinking about, your public role, your corporate role, some of your leadership roles with big companies. I know you helped us really building trust with a global pharmaceutical organization that's building trust in the midst of the global challenges, a recent merger and all that. But when you have to hold people accountable, yes. I mean, do you have any tips on how do you actually stay trusted or build trust in the midst of this challenge of having to have healthy accountability? I mean, any quick tips for that?
I think it starts with consistency, which is, one of the pillars. You have to be consistent in your efforts. And, in sales, when I led an organization of 135 people in the total organization, We had KPIs, we have key performance indicators that we managed to. But I think the first step is when you're talking about holding people accountable, you have to first understand what you're holding them accountable to. So you have buy-in from what you've agreed to, and that's the mission, that's the strategy, that's the vision, that's the objectives of the organization. And then from there, you have you have your check-ins, and you have ways to ensure that what the team is doing is on target or on par with what you agreed on. And that makes it, I forget how the manager said it to me one time, but he said there is great ease in managing to performance when you have specific indicators to measure that performance. And I think in some cases when companies have strategy du jour, you don't really have the opportunity to lead in the right way because you don't have those measures in place to ensure that the team understands what they're to do on a daily basis in order to be successful.
So let's go a little bit granular because this is all about trust. I mean, there's all kinds of levels of trust, but there's a lot of people today that have gone virtual. In your day as leading an organization, leading the sales part of an organization, you often weren't in the same city as them, but you had to lead them. So whether you led them virtually because you had to, or phone calls, or flying in once in a while and checking on things, or people today, let's take sales specifically, that we want to trust that salesperson is doing what they're supposed to be doing virtually. What would be, let's get to agreed upon KPIs. Are there certain measures? Is it, it's probably different for organizations, this many calls or this many of this, but what kind of things are we looking at to measure on, and how often do we need to check in?
Sure. In today's world, when I started with the organization, I would say, it was a weekly check-in would be okay because the measurements were pretty easy. And now it's just become so complicated with what teams have to do from an activity standpoint in order to be successful. And measuring that activity is probably the most important thing when it comes to KPIs today, because we know the activity leads to sales and the activity also leads to sustained relationships. And I think it's more of a daily check-in when you think about CRMs like Salesforce or HubSpot or any of the number of ones that are out there. The important thing is to have something where you can, at a glance, make sure that the activity is happening as a leader in order to grow sales based on the mission, vision, and strategy you have.
I love this. Activity leads to sales, and activity builds relationship. That's the consistency piece, too.
Yeah.
So if you're looking for a great sales, like maybe we even back out to you, what are some sales tips that you might have, like this worked for you to get, we're all in sales, right? It doesn't matter if we're in leadership, management, we want to sell a message, we want to sell impact, we want to sell a product, we want to sell a mission, or, get people to believe something today. What are are there any kind of tips for people to build trust by doing this, or just this sales tip worked? This activity is something I really looked for or loved when I found this in one of my team.
You sure? I'll break it up in two different places. When I'm thinking about a team member, especially when you're interviewing and you're trying to find someone to come alongside in the organization to help move the organization forward, you really look for a passion for sales. And then you want to make sure that the person has a passion for the product or service that you're asking them to be a part of. And if you can combine those two things, then I think you can be very successful. I just think of when I joined your team, or when I worked, or as I'm working with Genesis Works, the first thing I had to do, and I try to explain this to especially up and comers or even leaders, be a student of the business that you're a part of. And that means understanding the competition, understanding the products and services you offer, understanding what your value proposition is. And those things allow you to be more confident when you're selling a product. And then you're not selling, you're just presenting an opportunity for someone to join a very good or you're presenting an opportunity for someone to join your organization through the product or service that you offer. And I think that way it makes it a lot simpler for people to digest what you're sharing with them. And then it also makes it easier for them to do business with you. I think of the opportunity that we recently had with one of the organizations that we're working with, and it was more about a conversation and really delving in and understanding what their needs are, and then tailoring your solution to that particular need.
Boy, more and more. Everything's got to be contextualized, right? We want our burger our way. We want our this. You can't just stamp it out and say it's going to be like this and you're getting pickles and ketchup no matter what. It's got to be, I want my burger my way, and this trust stuff. And that project you're talking about, hey, we've seen some amazing change, but you spent, I should say, a lot of time listening and learning and seeing how can we apply this trust work to them in a way that will hit their KPIs and make a difference in their context.
And that's so true. And I think that's very important because I've been involved with organizations, and then we've seen people come in to help our organization move in a certain direction or to help our organization achieve a certain goal. And I think the one key component that we miss sometimes is the listening component. Kind of like, okay, taking your own ego and setting it aside and trying to get into the mindset of the people that you're serving. So that can be, if you're a consultant, that could be the group that you're consulting with. If you're a leader within an organization, that could be the team that you're leading. If it's your family, that could be your children. So all of those things, it's a consistent effort around how do you put yourself aside and attend to the needs of the one that you're leading so that you can present the best solution for them.
So, and I know you, and I know that this listening's a big deal for you. In fact, you kind of have 4 L's that you go by.
Yes.
Tell me about where were those inspired and what are they so people hear this? Because it's a great mantra for leadership.
Well, a lot of the things you learn to do as a leader is sometimes is anti to what you received as from your leadership. And so one of the things I learned very early on in my career is the importance of listening. And as a leader, when I think about mission and vision and strategy, what a leader should do is listen for the fact that the team understands what the mission or the vision that they've laid out for that particular team. And you hear that through, I think what you say sometimes, David, is the common language within the organization. Are you establishing a common language through listening to what your team is saying and also tying it to the mission and making sure it ties to your mission and vision? And then I think the other thing as a leader is about listening is to demonstrate your listening through your actions. So when you have an opportunity or you're looking to push forth a vision for the organization, make sure that you're demonstrating that you heard them and that you're presenting a collaborative environment as you are moving towards greater heights for the organization. Now, that doesn't mean that each and every time you have to acquiesce to the wins of the team, but it is important to really try to truly understand what their needs are and then provide the tools and resources for them.
So that's the listening L. Right. You've got 3 more L's that you go by in leadership. And then you
need to learn. Especially during COVID, I think we learned a lot. I think all of us have learned a lot. And I think, leaders today have really had to really kind of break the mold of what they were used to. And you learn from what you listen to, or you learn from what you glean from your team. And that may mean pivoting. That may mean stepping outside of the box that you may have normally stayed within. And I think that leaders that listen and then apply that through learning have a better opportunity to push their teams to greater heights. And then you talk about leading. And now leading is just that. It is stepping back and allowing your team to thrive by pointing in the right direction and then allowing them to move in that direction, providing the tools, providing the resources, removing the roadblocks, helping them make decisions in order to reach their journey. And then the last thing, I think sometimes when you have that person who is ready to branch out and be a leader themselves, you have to find a way to let go. And that's that empowerment piece. Empower your team to do the things necessary without you being there or absent of you being there, such that they can grow and learn to be leaders themselves.
I love it. So listen, learn, lead, and let go. 2 questions come to mind right away. What did you learn personally as a leader, in this last 9 months or in the last year of COVID?
I think the thing I learned most is there's great talent all around you. And I think that needs acknowledging. You need to acknowledge the people around you and really delve into what their opportunities are, but more importantly, what they're very good at. I'm reading a book right now called The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks, and it talks about their zone of genius and their ability to do that one thing that's great and allowing them to do that. And as a leader, coming alongside them and nurturing them. I've really, in my most recent role, I gained appreciation for I really enjoy teaching the next generation. And the organization that I'm currently with or working with, we have a number of millennials, and they're still searching for what it is that makes them special within the organization. And I love coming alongside them and helping them kind of calling that out and then challenging them to reach those greater heights.
I love it. And let's one more time as you go to let go. I think a lot of leaders. I've had challenges with this, but you think of that group that you're leading with millennials, or you think of just back to all the national sales teams you've led and whatnot. Is there any more as far as tips on accountability or anything you've learned about this millennial group you're leading largely, or just anything else on accountability? Because I think we have a lot of leaders like, yeah, I can just empower people, and I'm empowering them, and then they're going off the cliff the wrong direction. So how do I balance that empowerment with healthy accountability? Any tips?
Well, I think that's the thing, David. It's not, when I say let go, it's not like, it's a child. So as your child grows, you tend to allow them to do certain things, but you never fully let go of them, right? You're always there like guide rails on a road with a cliff. I mean, you're there to ensure that they don't go off that proverbial cliff, but by checking in with them and staying in tune with them. I don't mean let go in the sense of, okay, you got it, move on, or okay, I'm going to stand back at 30,000 feet the entire time. That's why those KPIs are in place, to ensure that, one, the activity stays there, such that the results can be there as well. So let go means you stay close enough to give them time to sway right or left, but they don't go over that proverbial edge because you're the guide rails as a leader.
Hey, it's Ann with the Trust Edge team here. As you know, we are passionate about helping you and your team perform at your best. And that's why David wrote his new book, Trusted Leader. This true-to-life parable follows the story of a CEO who uncovers the root issue threatening his organization's success. And in the back half of the book, David provides a roadmap for even how to solve those root issues. Get Trusted Leader for your team, your organization, or even just for yourself at trustedleaderbook.com.
Do you have thinking about this, do you have habits as a leader? I mean, getting personal, we talk about little things done consistently make the biggest difference, whether it's personal or at work. What do you have any personal routines or habits that, like, I do this because if I don't do this consistently for myself, I'm not as good?
Yeah. I probably come out of more of my habits during COVID and having a more unstructured schedule. But in a very structured environment, I spend a lot of time, one, taking a look at, as a sales leader, I spend a lot of time, taking a look at the numbers and really trying to figure out a way to share those in a manner that's digestible to the team that you're leading. I mean, when you look at an organization where I had $110 million and 100 and some odd salespeople, I had to break it down such that they could digest what I'm trying to share with them and the strategy or the mission for the week, if you will, or the mission sometimes for that particular day. So spending time really understanding the information such that you become less, it's not a novel for them to read, but you become the leader that provides them the cliff notes so they can get just enough to start the process of moving forward for that mission or vision that you have for them.
And your MBA, not to stay in the numbers, so to speak, very long, but your MBA was in data analytics, if I recall. What numbers should we be looking for? I don't know, whether it's in business or life. What kind of numbers is salesperson? What are a few numbers that you think these are the common KPIs that really everybody in whatever role should be thinking about?
Sure. When I think of sales in particular, sales is activity. When in the organization that I worked for, we dealt with schools, and we spent a lot of times trying to penetrate the market and gain market share. And the only way we were able to do that was have sales activity on a daily basis that led to the results that we were looking for. So that's the first thing, is how many calls does a salesperson make? Depending on the industry, it changes. If you are cold calling, it's going to be hundreds of calls in a given day. If you're more strategic and you're looking for warm calls and you have leads, it may be it may be 10 or 15, depending on the market that you're in. But in our world, we look for somewhere between 10 to 15 quality calls on a given day to help us reach our goals. And it's one thing to have an activity. It's another thing to have details behind that activity. So you have the activity, and then you have more qualified activity with more details to help you understand that we're actually moving through the sales process in the right way. You can have a visit, and then you can have a quality visit, and then you have a quality visit with the contact with the decision maker. And then from there, you either set up a meeting that you share the product or services that you're offering, and then you move it to close. So sometimes it can be a 5 or 6 step activity process before you get to that close. But the most important thing you can do as a leader is understand the iterative steps it takes, and then ensure that you're watching each of those steps and challenging them along the way. Activity is not a singular process, is probably what I'll say.
Absolutely. Well, we in our most transactional, everything from consulting and enterprise trust index and coaching and all the things we do here, the most transactional thing probably is transactional offering is speaking, right? Me going in and keynoting an event. And we have a process that has over 30 touch points for one speech to make sure it's consistent and valuable, all the way to follow up and thank you and all that. So, because all those can lead to more or be part of the sales process. But of course, the beginning of that is really salespeople are educators too. It's like, if we're not a fit, we don't want to be there, right? So
you're a consultant more than anything else. Consultative selling is probably the best way I could say it. And the other thing is that when you have a process and you close business, if you make it easy for them to do business with you, how likely is it for them to share who you are and what you do with others?
Absolutely.
And I think that's the thing that people don't understand sometimes is it's a transactional relationship, but it's a relationship nonetheless.
Absolutely. Love it. Well, you love this quote. Tell me how it inspires you. I know you even put it up. Leadership, like a stone dropped in a body of water, ripples well beyond the entry point.
Well, you think about it. I mean, you take a stone. I mean, I know you live out there next to a lake, and and I know your kids, and you probably throw rocks in the water. Once you throw that rock in the water, it ripples. It ripples north, south, east, and west. And I think leadership, good or bad, can do just that. When you are, I think of the leaders in my lifetime, the people that, I think of Jan Haig, for example, that gave me the opportunity many years ago. And the ripple effect that she had with me is still lasting today on how I approach things, how I treat people, how I lead. And Jan was one that led with empathy and compassion, of a leader, but she was also very tough on us as we were going through this, the leadership program. And I just think of that's probably the genesis of where I came up with that quote, because I think of, the ripple effect of what she did with me now affects how I lead. And over the 24 years I was with that organization, how many people I touched. So that's why I say it ripples well beyond the entry point, because that entry point back in 1995 is still affecting people today.
And we talk a lot about how we lead ourselves matters. Like personally,
Sure.
How am I leading myself? Because we want to be, in essence, the same on stage and off. You've got some beautiful kids over there, an amazing wife that's brilliant. And,
yes.
What do you do to kind of keep yourself imperfect as we are? How do you lead yourself personally? What are any ideas there?
I think it gets back to it gets back to the outcomes. So again, input, I think you said a lot, David, in your work, input versus output. And, I was reading an article by a guy named Jeff Perry recently. He said, your leadership style is made up of who you are, how you grew up. Some of us grew up with very meager beginnings like I did. Some without a mom and dad in a home. My mom died early on when I was younger. And then some of us grew up with a family around us. But no matter which way we grew up, that affects how you lead people. And my outcome for my children is I want to be around for them because I didn't have that when I was younger. So I didn't have certain things when I was younger. So I want to strive to show them a different world than I had. Or I want to be there as a father because my father figure wasn't in the picture with me. So it's really about the activity that I do to really change the narrative around how I felt what was missing in my leadership journey as I was younger to affect their leadership journey as they start to get into their formative years. I mean, I have a 17-year-old, he's a senior. Next year, he goes out into the world. And so I want to make sure that how he treats people is indicative of how he learned how to be treated at home. I have a middle daughter who's 13. I want her to understand that when she goes out into the world and meets a young man, I want her to see how she should be treated by the way of my interaction with her. And then I have a 5-year-old, in the same way, a 5-year-old son, where I have to do the same thing with him as I did with my oldest son. So that's probably the best way I'll say it is leadership is still about activity and results. Whether you're a family man or a family person or in a business or an entrepreneur or consultant, it doesn't matter. Whatever your activity is going to lead to some result. And it's just a matter of what result would you like that to be.
Tell us, this brings up another personal side of you that I've seen be amazing, and that's some of your giving work and mentoring work. And I know you're a part of an organization where you're really not just where you're interim operations director right now, but also really your work with young men and mentorship. Tell us a little bit about that and why you got involved.
Yeah, well, I'm not involved this year because my son is a part of the program and dads get to take a year off when their sons are in the program. But the program is called Rites of Passage. It is sponsored by Jack and Jill. It's been around for, I think, 23 years now. And for the time that I've been in Minneapolis, back in Minneapolis since 2012, I've been involved in it. I started out as a mentor, and then over the last 6 years, I was the co-chair helping to shape the program with the help of a number of businessmen within the Twin Cities. And I think the thing that, again, that drives me to be involved with things like that is somewhat of what I wish I had when I was growing up. And then the other part of it is you want to ensure, getting back to that guardrail analogy, that these kids are college bound, and you want to ensure that they have the opportunity to stay within those guardrails and not fall off the cliff when they go to school, and to make good decisions around relationships, to make good decisions around study habits, to make good decisions around potentially a mate that they choose. So that's the reason I got involved, is to just be that extra ear for those kids who have the opportunity or will have the opportunity to affect the world in the future.
And I saw the graduation of your son, and what an amazing, powerful experience as far as how that whole, program plays out in your leadership there. This year in the last year, racial tension has been brought to the surface. And again, and and I know it's always been here, but what's it as a leader of color to all of us? What do we have to learn? What could we learn as far as being high trust leaders in the midst of these tensions? How can we be high trust leaders?
I think the first step, and I put out a little video some time ago when everything kind of hit the fan, and I said, the goal is not necessarily to change the people around you. The goal is to change your perspective. And the only way you can change your perspective is by being involved in something that makes you uncomfortable. And I think this flashpoint with the murder of George Floyd, it made a lot of people uncomfortable. And I think a lot of people stood up and said, I just had enough. I've had enough of this. And that has to come from inside. I don't think there's anything that a person can do to really change how you think. That has to come from you doing some soul searching to say, I don't like what's going on. And I, as a leader, whether I'm in a small business, a medium-sized business, a large business, what can I do to effectuate change where I am today? And if that means I need to be more culturally diverse in employing people, I need to do that. And I need to do that with a level of intention. if I need to stand up and have a conversation, whether I'm in the boardroom or the clubhouse, because someone says something that's not true or someone says something that's demeaning, I need to stand up and do that and plant that seed. So I think that's the difference is how do you want to be represented? And then what are you going to do in order to represent yourself in a manner that makes you look in the mirror and feel like you've done something to effectuate positive change in your community? And you don't have to have a leadership title to do that. You just have to be a person who cares.
Well, one thing I've seen you do is have healthy conversations, like be willing to have tough conversations and do them well and with respect. You know, I've often said this, one of the most important attributes of a leader actually is the willingness to have tough conversations.
Sure.
But any tips for the leaders listening on how do you have healthy, difficult conversations?
I think you just said it. You have to start. You know, when things get uncomfortable, and I'm going to just speak for me. Sometimes when things get uncomfortable for me, I try to I'm not going to deal with that right now, or I'm going to shy away from that at this particular moment. And I think it's time for people to stop shying away from those conversations and then just taking a chance, leaning in. You know, you and I have had some conversations around how things worked when George Floyd was murdered and how I felt versus how you felt and how the people around us felt. And I think that just by starting at that point and having a conversation where there's nothing to prove, nothing to gain, we just want to talk. And I often tell people that I'm mentoring is you're over 21 now. It's time to have adult conversations. And adult conversations sometimes mean we're going to challenge the status quo, or we're going to lean in some topics that not only makes the person that we're talking to uncomfortable, it might very well make us uncomfortable.
Yeah. I remember that. We both said, well, how you feeling today? And we wrote it down on a piece of paper and turned it over. And we both said misunderstood. Yeah. So, well, let's go to this. You know, you're working with teams, you're leading teams. You've certainly had leadership role here. How do you motivate others these days? What are some ways, if you've got to motivate a team or an individual, what do you do?
Well, I think regardless of where they are in their career, I think in a lot of cases, leaders, for the most part, are visionaries. And I think true leaders really see things in others that they can't very well see in themselves. And the thing that I try to do, whether I'm talking to a leader in a C-suite or a entry-level employee, it is if I see something, one, you have to I think you should ask for permission to call it out or ask for permission to give them feedback. And then once they're okay and you've demystified what it is to give them feedback, then you call whatever it is that you see out of them. And you say, you know, David, what I see in you is XYZ. David, what I see in you is the ability to really connect well with people. And then you ask them for permission to come alongside them to help them to shape that particular attribute that you've called out of them. And I think that's it. I've said it, you know, people ask me a lot of times that is a leader should call out what they see, ask for permission, call out what they see, and then come alongside that person to help them to shore up that opportunity that may have, or to really strengthen that strength that they may not even be aware of. A lot of times, we as leaders don't take the time to do that because we have all of these conflicting priorities. We have to grow sales. We have to have this certain activity. We have someone looking over our shoulder for this. We have cross-functional teams. We have matrixed organizations. We gotta play well into the sandbox. But at the end of the day, as a leader, our job is to take good care of the people that we are entrusted to lead at that given moment.
You know, my wife calls that see the good, say the good, share the good. And of course, that doesn't get on the accountability side, but she said, you've got to see the good more and then say the good in that person and then share that good, you know? So see the good, say the good, share the good. can be a part of that, I think. So thank you.
I think what my wife would also say is you can't overthink of how the person's going to respond, because she would say there's 3 R's. They either receive it, they reject it, or repurpose it. And I think that's so important too, is that, don't hold back, because you never know if you're robbing somebody of an opportunity to get better at something, or if you're robbing a person of an opportunity to shore up a strength. So you want to be bold as a leader and to help them find their true north. Yeah.
That's great. What do you hope for in the future? If you're thinking ahead, what's your biggest hope for the future that you're thinking about down the road?
I really just hope that people embrace the opportunity that we've had to have a lot of self-reflection through this unfortunate process called coronavirus or COVID-19, and to utilize those learnings as they come out of this environment in a positive manner to help others. I think that is so important. And in a lot of ways, the examples that we've had for leadership shouldn't be the determinant of how we approach life. It should be the adverse. It should be, let's learn from what we see and then become a better version of what we see.
I love it. Well, I would love to talk all day to you, and I so appreciate you, and I'm proud of just the work that you do. And let's go. It's time for the lightning round. Are you ready for quick answers?
Okay.
All right, here we go.
I didn't know if we were ending or beginning. Let's go.
Here we go. We're getting into the lightning round. It's time, Milton Dodd. Hey, all right. So number 1, what is your favorite current book or resource?
My favorite current book right now is The Big Leap, by Gay Hendricks. It talks about, conquering the hidden fear and taking life to the next level, staying into your zone of genius. Check it out.
Love it. Any quick tip, like, hey, leaders for productivity or for leading, they could apply tomorrow morning. Any quick tip or idea that you haven't shared so far?
If you have a thought, write it down. I think, I'm not the best at it, but I think journaling is underrated.
Absolutely. All right. What's something you can't live without?
Golf.
That's true. What is a quote you live by? You already shared that today, the ripple effect. Any other quotes or big thoughts or banners that go through your head all the time to kind of keep you centered or motivated?
Yeah, I don't know if it's a quote, but it's a quote from a song. So I guess it is a quote. No complaints, no regrets. I still believe in chasing dreams and placing bets.
There we go. So what a great conversation with Milton. How would you best be reached? If we're going to look out for Milton Dodd and the things you're thinking about, talking about, writing about, posting, where's the best place to reach you?
Typically if I'm posting something, it's mostly on Instagram. My name is my name, Milton Dodd. Or you can find me on LinkedIn at Milton Dodd as well.
D-O-D-D. That's right.
D-O-D-D.
Milton Dodd. We call him the doctor, M.D. Milton
That's
Dodd.
Right. I've been mistaken for a doctor several times.
He fixes things and cultures and people and definitely builds trust along the way. So for anything that was mentioned, the book you mentioned, some of those quotes, and any of the LinkedIn or Instagram, you can also go to trustedleadershow.com. Everything will be there for you. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time. Keep building trust.